Hello, this is Adam Eason again. I'm here to talk about rhythm. Last time I talked about reading pitch and reading frequencies on a staff, and you can see here we don't have those staffs. I'm not going to talk about pitch at all in this video. Instead, we're just going to have these single line percussion things, so we don't really have any bass clef or treble clef or any of that nonsense going on. We're just going to be looking at how to read rhythms on our Western musical notation. Okay, so what you want to think of a line on a musical staff as, you want to think of it as if it's a representation of a length of time. Like if you took time and you turned it into a string, that's basically what you're going to get here. And just like you can divide a line into even segments, we can divide time into even segments as well, or as close to even as possible anyways. We actually do this all the time. We use clocks, right? 60 seconds per minute, 60 minutes per hour, 24 hours in a day. The seconds, minutes, and hours are all divisions of time that happen at regular intervals. What we as musicians use as our kind of base length of time is a minute. And we'll divide that minute into equal parts from a very low number to a very high number. And we'll count those parts as a beat. So we'll be counting beats per minute. Alright, so easiest one is 60. There's 60 seconds in a minute. If we just replace seconds with beats, we get 60 beats per minute. And the beats will happen at approximately these intervals, right? Unless you're traveling at like the speed of light or something, in which case it gets a little funky, but we don't have to worry about that. So the more beats we want to fit into a minute, the shorter the intervals will get, right? And so it'll go faster. If we want to fit fewer or go slower, fewer beats per minute, it'll go slower, right? That's pretty straightforward, I think. Where it gets a little awkward is when you're reading, right? Okay, so ignore the clef because that doesn't tell us any information at all except that this is a percussion line. You have these numbers, right? And those numbers are going to tell us how we divide this particular line into shorter, more manageable segments so that it's not just a string of notes going on and on and on and on. Okay? So this line is our time. We're going to divide this line into beats, and we're going to further divide it up into their own regular segments. Alright? So we have 4 and we have 4. The top number here tells us how many beats is going to happen per measure or per bar, depending on who you ask. These lines are the vertical lines are the division that marks a bar or a measure. Everything in between the bar lines or the measure lines, that's our measure. Alright, so each measure is going to be divided into, in this case, 4 beats per measure. So regardless of our tempo, it can be 60 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute, 30 beats per minute, whatever. Each of those beats is going to happen 4 times, and then we're going to turn over into a new measure. The bottom number is a little bit more complicated. That won't quite make sense until we talk about the notes down here and the different note heads and note stems. But basically, this is sort of like a fraction, not quite, but it'll tell us that this rhythmic value is going to get 1 beat. Alright, so let's go to up here. Here we have several different qualities, rhythmic values of notes. We have this, it's an empty oval, basically, no stem. And we're going to call this the whole note. And you see in parentheses, in England they call it a semibrev, but I'm American, so I'm just going to call it how I'm comfortable calling it. This is our whole note. Here we have an empty oval with a single stem, and this we'll call a half note. Here's a black filled in oval with a stem, and this will be a quarter note. Now we have the black filled in note head with a stem and a flag, and this will be our 8th note. A stem and 2 flags will be a 16th note. A stem and 3 flags will be our 32nd note. Alright, so hopefully you've noticed a pattern here. If we start with our whole note and go to half notes, well, half we just divide it by 2, right? If we go from half notes to quarter notes, well, that's a half divided by 2 again, right? 2 quarters, 1 quarter plus 1 quarter equals half, right? 1/8 plus 1/8 equals 1 quarter. 1/16 plus 1/16 equals 1/8, and it goes on. In Western music, what we tend to do is just split it up in halves. Sometimes you'll see it split up into 3s, but that's for a slightly later time when I get into the more, I guess, complicated rhythmic values that we can see. Okay, so we have whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, 8th notes, 16th notes, and 32nd notes, which I won't use in this demonstration, but they're there. So if this is a quarter note, and we know that a quarter note is getting a beat, then we know that there will be 4 quarter notes in a bar. Just like that, right? And if I play it out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. Then you get here. And if I just play it, you don't hear anything. The beats are still counting, but there's no sound. This is a rest. Rests are just silence. You sit there and you don't play. You keep counting, because otherwise you'll get lost, but you're not actually playing anything out loud. And just like we have whole rests, we have half rests, which is a little confusing because it's the same little black bar, but it's on top of the line. We have quarter rests, which is this kind of weird squiggly line. We have 8th rests, which is a different kind of weird little squiggly line. And then as we get smaller, it'll start adding these little flags, right? So 2 flags is a 16th rest, 3 flags is a 32nd rest as you divide it in half and divide it in half, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So when you're counting rhythms, you have notes that you're playing, rests that you're just counting and waiting to play again. Okay? To help make it further clear that we have these split things in half, 4 beats for a whole note, 2 beats for a half note. If we put these half notes up here, 2 quarters per half note, and then 8th notes, alright? So now if I play it and I'm counting along, you can hear how these divide in half each time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? It's a little hard to hear because they're not different pitched percussions. Maybe I should have done that. But you could see it, right? They're there. It's just getting divided in half. And these play at the same time. These play at the same time, right? Etc., etc., etc. You just divide things in half. Divide things in 2. Okay, let's delete all this real quick and help show different time signatures. Here we have 3/4, so the quarter note still gets a beat. The 3 says there's 3 quarter notes in a bar. See? Now instead of 4 quarter notes per bar, we only have 3. But a whole note, this is 4 quarter notes. So if I want to put a whole note down, it's not going to fit in the bar, right? Right. What happens? Well, let's just click and find out. Oh! Okay, now we have this half note. It has a little dot next to it. And we also have this line. Okay? And it's connecting to another quarter note. What's going on here? Alright, let's start with the dot. Half note we already know is 2 quarter notes. What the dot does is it adds, and this is a little confusing to new players, it adds half of the value to the note it's attached to, half of the rhythmic value. So we know that a half note is 2 quarter notes, half of that is 1, so the dot adds 1 quarter note, and we get 3 quarter notes in this. 2 for the half note, 1 for the dot, and that fills up the 3. This is a tie. Alright? It also looks like slurs, which we'll get to later, so it can be a little confusing. The tie is used when you want to hold a note past the bar line, right? Because sometimes that happens. Like I said, I want this to hold out for 4 beats, not just 3, and I don't want to restrike this again, right? So the tie says that these notes are going to be connected and held out together. So this will be held out for 3 beats for this one, plus 1 for this one, and we get 4 beats for this whole unit here. Alright? I understand it's a lot to take in, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly. Ties can be used with anything, and dots can be used with anything. So if I want to add a dot to a quarter note, a quarter note is 2/8 notes. You add half the value for the dot, that's 3/8 notes. And you can see already it's taking up an 8th note. Here's our 8th rest. It's taking up another 8th note in here. If I take this away and get rid of the tie and start adding 8th notes here, right? You can see the dot in action a little more clearly. 3/8 notes in here, 3 quarter notes in here. You just add half the value. It can get a little bit crazy because sometimes you'll see 2 dots. You'll almost never see 3 dots, I hope. And it'll just add another half of it gets a little confusing. Don't worry, just 1 dot at a time. Okay. Alright, so if I play this, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Again, it's a little hard to hear. I'll go over to some pitches in a second video so that you can hear these things line up more clearly. But basically, right, you're just looking for rhythmic values, and you have to remember what values these all get and how they relate to the time signature here at the beginning. Okay, let's do one more time signature before I call it quits for the day. We'll do an other, and we'll do 3/8. Alright, now we know still 3 beats per bar, 3 beats per measure, but now the 8th note is getting the beat. So instead of 3 quarter notes, like we had in 3/4, oh my goodness, look at this. Alright, so we have 2/8 notes here, 1/8 note here, and then the bar ends. Alright, pretty straightforward. We have a tie here, because I put in a quarter note, but there's not enough room in the measure for that quarter note, so the tie groups these two together and it's held over the bar line. And then we have 2 more eighth notes here. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And I can put eighth notes in to show you that this is happening. All right? And again. Yes? Now these eighth notes are getting a beat instead of the quarter notes. So you have to be really careful when you're counting, right? You have to know which rhythmic value is getting the beat and how many beats, how many of those rhythmic values are happening per bar, okay? In the next video, I'm going to go back to the staff that includes reading, so it'll have the clefs, and it'll also start to include rhythms, so that you can see it all come together at its most basic level, right? Including ties and dots and things here, right? 3/16 notes. If I want 3/8 notes, here's the quarter note with a dot, okay? Adding half of the value. All right, like I said, next time I'll dig into counting rhythms with pitches, so that you can see it all come together, like I said, probably with something very simple like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something from a Suzuki book, right? And that way you can also hear how the rhythms overlap and interact along with the pitches, okay? But that was just rhythms for today. Be careful with your time signatures and be careful with your counting. And always remember, just because you have a rest doesn't mean your brain turns off. You got to keep counting through them. Otherwise, you'll get lost. Okay. Also, your conductor will probably get angry at you. Yeah, that's not happened to me before, ever, at all. Anyways, that's it for today. Like the video if you like it. Comments, questions, concerns in the comments if you have any. And subscribe if you want to keep up with these as I come up with them in a somewhat regular basis. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope this helped.